Welcome to a video on GiS BasePac version 8. In this video we are going to talk about bringing in an image and turning it into Applique with using the drawing mode as well as the coordinate mode. So with Applique, first of all, Applique is a three-step process, meaning that when we actually do the applique on the machine, it's done in three steps. The first step is a placement stitch. With a placement stitch, what we do is actually set the line of where the applique fabric will fall on the textile. The second piece of that, or the second step, would be the tack down stitch. The tack down stitch will tack down the fabric onto the textile. And then the third stitch is the third step is the cover stitch, which is typically a satin stitch, and it will do the final stitch on the edges of the applique material to attach it to the textile. So on the first step with the placement stitch, usually we want that to be the exact size and shape of the material that we are appliquing down, because what that will do is it'll show us on our textile where to place that fabric. So after that stitch goes down, the machine, we want to put a stop function into the machine. The machine will then stop, so at that point we can line up our material, our applique material, with the placement stitch and lay that down into the fabric. Once we have that in place, we start the machine back up, and it will then put down the tack down stitch, which typically is either a running stitch or a loose zigzag stitch that will tack down the material and keep it in place. So then after that, we can make sure it's in the correct position. We can also do any trimming of extra fabric if we need to after that tack down stitch. It'll also keep it in place so that when we do the cover stitch, it's a bit secure, so that when we do the cover stitch it's not going to move. So in between the tack down stitch and the cover stitch, we do want the machine to stop in case we need to do any trimming or if we need to change anything. So let's get started. First of all, we are going to bring in an image of the fabric that we want to, or the shape that we would like to applique. To do that, we will go to File, left click on File, Import Picture, and I will just do it from a file. When I do that here, I have an anchor that I've taken. I'll go ahead, and I just got this from the internet. I'll go ahead and hit open. And when I hit open, it will now ask me to measure. I'm going to measure the widest part of this anchor in the black. So I'm going to start here, and I'm going to make a left click. I'm going to scroll over to the other side and make another left click, and here you can see my measurement is at 411. I don't want it that wide. I'm actually going to type in 150. That's about how wide I want it, and we're going to go ahead and press OK. I am not going to use the ACE in this video. We are just going to use the original picture. I'm not going to recalculate anything or have it redraw anything for me. We're just going to do this all manually. So I'll go ahead and click on Use Original Picture, so it'll bypass everything, and now I am in the program. I am going to take this and move this to the middle, so I'm going to go up here to my menu and type in 0 here, calculate, and 0 here, and calculate. Now I do have my scroll bars I can scroll through. I can also use on the left hand side the zoom all modules and bring that into my screen. So with the picture, it is a little bit dark, so I'm going to go to picture and then contrast, and I'm going to go ahead and let's go ahead and bring that brightness up. Let's test that out. I'm just going to keep hitting test until I'm happy. So I'm happy with that shade. I'll go ahead and hit OK. And now what I need to do is I need to trace this in my drawing tools. This is the exact shape and size of the fabric that I'd like to applique. So you know, that's one thing when you do bring in you know, an image. You do need to make sure that you are at the exact shape and size of the applique fabric. While we are in this picture mode right here, you can click on the P up here at the modify. And if I left click on that, here you can do the sizing to whatever you need it to be in case you didn't do that in the beginning. So we'll go ahead and hit OK here. And now we're back to this image. So after we have our shape to what we want, the next thing to do is to kind of start drawing it if it's not already drawn for us. Since we are taking a manual approach, I would like to go into the drawing mode and start drawing the vectors of it. What's nice about this is I can utilize these vectors if I am using a cutter or a laser or you know, anything that uses the vector information, along with you know, I can use this in conjunction with my stitch information. So first thing I need to do is I need to change to the drawing mode, because right now I am in the picture mode. That's on the left hand side. With the drawing mode, you've got two different options. You've got the drawing mode and then you've got the drawing block mode, which will give us some additional tools to use. So the first thing I'm going to do is draw the inside of this circle here, and we are going to go ahead and use the zoom in tool. I'm going to left click, hold and drag and zoom in on that area. I am still in picture mode, so you can see, you know, at the top here my toolbar does have to do with modifying the picture. So I'm going to change this to drawing mode. You're going to see that toolbar change, and up here at the top I have the ability to draw with different shapes. I do need to activate the insert / overwrite icon, so I'm going to left click on that, and now I have the ability to choose, you know, different shapes to draw with, and I'm going to utilize the circle tool. And the way I'm going to do the circle tool is I'm going to utilize it with the left click, hold and drag. By doing the left click, hold and drag, you start from the center and it will radiate out. So I'm going to left click on my mouse, hold and drag. You can see I'm radiating out, and I'm going to get it to about the size of the shape that I need. We can change this. So I don't have to be perfect. Once I'm done, I'm just going to left click on that insert overwrite tool. When I do deselect that tool, I can left click off to the side, which deselects the object or the area that I drew, and you can see that it's not selected because it's blue, but when I left click on it, it turns red. And another little hint that's going to show you that it's selected or not selected is that over here on the left hand side, if you do have your film turned on, it will highlight green when it's selected. If it's not selected, it won't be highlighted at all. So I'm going to select it, and since we do need to kind of, you know, change the size of it, that's where I would go to my drawing block mode. The drawing block mode is right above the drawing mode. I will left click on that, and now you can see that I do have kind of a bounding box around my design. But the thing is that it does not, these blue nodes where I can usually size it are not activated. The only thing I can do right now is just move it around. I can't really go in and change the size. If I try to change the size, all it does is actually just move it. So what we have to do is actually convert it to curves. The other benefit of converting it to curves is that we are able to use the offset tool, which again is good for the applique because it allows us to do negative or positive offset for tack down stitches. So to change it to curves, I'm going to go to drawing and then convert to curves. When I convert to curves, now you can see that bounding box with those blue nodes. The blue nodes kind of get darker or highlight, and now I can take that and I can, change the size to what I need. So once I've got that shape, this is going to be part of my placement. So if you think about it, this will turn into running stitches so that it will show me that's part of the bounding area of the material that I'd like to applique. When I do this and I convert it to curves, one thing I do want to point out is that when I do go to the drawing mode, left click on drawing mode, I have the ability now to use the duplicate line, or what I call the offset, where, here you can put in a distance, and just to kind of give you an example of how it's used, I'm going to type in 0.5 millimeters. With this selected, I'm going to go ahead and click on the duplicate line, and you can see it puts a duplicate line 0.5 millimeters outside the original. So you can see this can be beneficial. This can be really helpful for making those offset lines. So with it selected, I can actually delete all these nodes if I want, but the easy thing to do is actually just hit the undo button. So now I'm back to just the single line. We're going to talk about offsets in a little bit. So let's go ahead and deselect. I'm not in the tool right now. I'm going to deselect that, and we're going to go and we're going to start drawing the outside of this anchor here. So now we're going to start drawing the outside of the anchor. And in order to do that, we need to turn the Insert Overwrite tool back on. I'm going to left click on that. We are not going to use the closed curve, so I'm just going to left click on that to deselect that. And on the left hand side here, I do have the option to go between straight point and curve point. When I make a left click, that'll give me a curve because I am selected on it, or I can do straight. Now I'm going to stay in the curve mode because I can still do straight points, but with a double left click. So I'm going to start here on the anchor, and I'm going to make a double left click for a straight point. So I'll make a double left click, and then I'm going to come and start making single left clicks and redrawing the outside of this anchor here. And while I'm drawing this, I don't have to be, absolutely perfect, because I can also change these points, with the editing tools that I have available in the drawing mode. I can always hit backspace and go back one at a time if I'd like. So I'm just going to, single left click. When I come to a corner point, I'm going to double left click. And then you can see I'm going to come down. It'll automatically scroll. Don't use your scroll wheel to try and scroll, because if you do use your scroll wheel, let me show you what happens. That you do go through the different points that you made. So I'll make a double left click here, and I'll just keep drawing with my tool, double left click. Go ahead and scroll down. A double left click, double left click, and keep drawing this as necessary. If I do need to use my tools to zoom out or zoom in, I have those tools available to me, as you're drawing around here. So I'm going to double left click, and then I'm going to start using my curve points, and go down and start drawing this. So instead of watching me drawing this, we're just going to go ahead and fast forward to the next segment after I'm finished drawing this. So after I have drawn the outside of the anchor, I deactivated the Insert Overwrite tool. So I clicked on that, and now you can see that I've got the actual individual inputs here, and I can left click on each one if I want and move that around. If I do need to insert extra points, you know, if I have something that I need to change, I can always do that. So if I am selected on a node, and you can see with the nodes you have an arrow on one side of it. That arrow means that you know, the next node, or you know, points to the next node. If I do want to insert a node in between this one and the next one, I would select the node with a left click, go to the Insert Overwrite tool, left click on that, and now I can insert more nodes if I want. I am on the curve tool, so if I left double click, it will make a corner point. If I left single click, it'll make a curve point. Here I am going to hit the backspace key twice, so I'm back to it, and deselect the Insert Overwrite tool. So now I've drawn, you know, my anchor, the outside of the anchor, and again, you know, you have to envision that this is going to be my placement stitch, or you know, the exact shape and size of the fabric that I want to applique here. So it's important that you draw it the exact shape and size. I am going to go over to the left hand side here and click all modules and go ahead and zoom in on everything. I left click off to the side to deselect everything, and now you can see my blue lines that do have those vectors of what I drew. So the next step is taking this drawing and turning it into stitches for the applique, the different applique steps. But before we do that, I want to show you something that I've already done, but we can take these vectors and actually save them as a DXF file. And you can see I've selected them, but I can go to File and Export Drawing as DXF, and when I do that, I can now save it, and I'm going to save it as a DXF format. I've already saved it here as Anchor, and what I've done, just to show you, is that in CorelDRAW I have opened it up, and it is vector lines, so if I do need to use that for a cutter or a laser or anything, you know, where I'm cutting material and I need those vector lines, there it is. So you can see now that I can use that DXF from the GIS file. So let's go ahead, and I'm just going to deselect everything, and we're just going to go one by one. So the first one that I would like to turn into a running stitch is the center here, and when I click on that, it selects the area, and I'm going to go ahead and left click on the ACE, or the automatic computerized embroidery. Left click on that. I do want it as a border. I want it as a running stitch, and I'm going to go ahead and press OK, and it's going to go ahead and automatically draw or redraw that line with stitches. And I can see this when I do go to the coordinate mode. If I left click on that, you can see in the coordinate mode that number 1 here does have my my stitches in there. So I'm in the coordinate mode. My Insert Overwrite tool is not on, so just to see, I'm just going to left click here, and you can see that red line now has my stitching. So, you know, that's the first one. Then we're going to do the outside. So in order to do that, we'll go back to the drawing mode, and we're going to go ahead and left click without the Insert Overwrite on. We're going to left click to select the outside here, and we're going to turn that into stitches. So with it selected, we will then go to the ACE, left click on that, and I do want a border, but this time I want to show you something something called optimize points. With optimize points on, it will kind of in a sense redraw these lines that you just made, and it'll do what it thinks it should be done, which really I want it to follow exactly these points. So I'm just going to deselect this optimize points. I'll go ahead and press OK. When I press OK, you can see I kind of have a red area in there. I'll go to my coordinate mode, left click, and now you can see that it is following it. With that, I do see a little line right here, and that's because my stitch length is a little bit longer, and so it's not following that red line just right. So what we need to do is we need to go to the parameters and change the length of our stitches. There's an easy way to do that. With it selected, you can see right here that it is selected with the red line, and our insert overwrite is not on right now. But I can take that stitch length right up here where it says 4 millimeters. I'm just going to bring it down to 2 millimeters and hit enter on my keyboard, and then I will calculate. Once I calculate, we should see that kind of disappear. You can see it gets better as it goes right in there. And now let's also do that for the inside here. So I'm going to left click on the inside, highlight that, change that to 2, hit enter, and then calculate. So I do have stitching a little bit closer to each other. So here we have the first step. I'm just going to left click off to the side to deselect everything. We do have the first step of our stitching. We have the placement stitch of the anchor. So what this is going to do is our machine is going to lay down the stitches of just on the outline, just in running stitches. A single run stitch is just fine, and this is going to show us where to place the fabric on our textile, whether it's a shirt or whatever it may be. The next step would be the tack down stitch. Typically the tack down stitch is a little bit to the interior of the placement stitch, so just on the inside here, and it's typically a running stitch or a loose zigzag stitch, and this can be done by utilizing the existing drawing and giving it an offset like we showed you earlier. So I'm going to go back to the drawing mode. I'm going to left click on the drawing mode, and we are going to left click on the inner circle, and remember I put it at 0.5. Now if I put it at a negative 0.5, it would make it on the white area, which we need to make it on the black area because that's where our fabric is. This is going to be the t-shirt. So let me zoom in. I'm going to click on selected modules on the zoom toolbar, and we're zoomed in there, and we're going to go ahead and with the 0.5, I think that's a good distance. I'm going to go ahead and click on duplicate line. So when I duplicate that line, now you can see that I do have an offset, and I can change that to stitching. So while we're in here, we might as well change it to stitching. So with it selected, I'm going to click on the ace, the border. I'm just going to do a running stitch. I'll deselect optimize points, press OK. It's going to go ahead and do that 4 millimeter stitching. You can see that's a little bit longer. I'm going to go to the coordinate mode, left click on that mode, and we're going to bring that down to 2 millimeters. Hit enter, and then we'll go ahead and calculate. So once we calculate, you can see it follows that line better because we do have we do have smaller stitches, so it's following the curve a little bit better. Now we do have an option to change the stitch type to maybe like a swing stitch, meaning that it's going to swing that that running stitch a little bit. And if I click on that, you'll see here, let's go ahead and calculate. You can see that it does have a little bit of a zigzag effect. Now the problem with this is that it is going a little bit to the inside of the t-shirt area. This would be okay as long as our cover stitch covers it. But if we need to go to the parameters, we can certainly click on the parameter here. We can go to our swing and shift and change the setting here. So what we're going to do is we're going to change this maybe to 0.5 millimeters. Let's go ahead and hit OK and calculate. And you can see the swing is not so much. Maybe we also want to bring the stitch length down. I'll hit enter. We'll go ahead and calculate. And we'll have smaller stitches, and it actually closes it up a little bit. So there, that kind of gives us a little bit more, I guess it gives us a bit more stability. It tacks it down a little bit better than just a regular running stitch. So that might be good to use instead of a running stitch. So we'll go ahead and left click off to the side, and now you can see that you have that kind of zigzag stitch as well. Now over on the left hand side on our film, we have a little trim button, a stop button, and a needle change button. I'm going to click on the stop function so that my machine will stop after the inside circle here and the outer area of the anchor stitches. My machine will then stop and give me the ability to lay down the fabric, and then I can start it again and it'll do the tack down stitch. So let's do the same for the outside of this anchor. We're going to click on all modules over here on the zoom toolbar and go back to the drawing mode. So in the drawing mode, we will select the outside of the anchor, and now we have to do the offset. But because we want it on the inside here, we're going to put a negative sign in front of this 0.05 or 0.5, negative 0.5. Click on duplicate line, and actually that goes to the outside. So I was wrong. We're going to go ahead and hit the undo button, and we'll delete that and go ahead and click on duplicate line. Now it goes on the inside. With that selected, and actually we could probably have a little bit more, so I'm just going to hit the undo button one more time. We're going to type in 1 here, and we'll do the duplicate line, and it goes in a little bit further. So you can see that I'm changing that offset a little bit to accommodate what I'd like. Now let's change that to that swing stitch. So we're going to go to A's. Because it is selected, we're going to click on border. We're going to change the border. The border is now running stitch, but in here we can actually change it from running to swing and shift. And if I want to go in and change the settings, I can click here. I can go ahead and change the setting if I want. Let's change that to 0.75, and we'll change the stitch length to 2. We'll go ahead and press OK. We'll go ahead, and if you want to save it, you can. Let's go ahead and cancel. We'll deselect the optimized point so it'll follow my line the way I want it to. Press OK, and now you've got that kind of that zigzag stitch again to hold down the fabric. So let's zoom in and see how that looks. You can see it goes right to the edge. If we do want it to, go over a little bit, let's go to the coordinate mode. Let's left click on it. We will then go to the parameters. Here, let's let it we'll let it shift a little bit more. I guess I did not save my settings, so let's go ahead and do that. We'll press OK, and we'll calculate. And you can see it goes a little bit outside. So it is, holding that nice, nicely. We'll go ahead and hit 2, enter. we'll calculate. You can see it's a little bit, closer together. It's going to hold that, part of the design pretty nicely there. So after I have my settings down, that is the second part of the applique. So let's go ahead and zoom all modules, and we can see here, I'm going to left click off to the side so everything's deselected. Let's look at this and kind of break this apart. So my first object that's going to stitch is the inside here, and it's going to do the placement stitch of the inside of the anchor as well as the outside. So that's going to show me where to place my fabric. After that, the machine's going to stop. I do have a little stop function on, and then it's going to allow me to put down the fabric onto, the garment. I put that fabric down, then I start the machine again, and the second thing it's going to do is my tack down stitch. So the tack down stitch, I've done the swing and shift type of stitch, and it's going to do the inside and then the outside. Now, we don't have another area stitching yet, so we don't have the ability to hit the stop sign, to stop the machine. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do the third step, and that's the cover stitch. But it would stop. We do want it to stop afterwards in case we need to, in case we need to do any trimming, in case we, did something wrong, whatever it may be, you do want it to stop just to double check. With the last step, I can actually utilize what I've already done in the coordinate mode with the zigzag stitch and, change that into a center line, satin stitch. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to zoom in on the center, circle here. So I've got the magnifying glass. I'm going to go ahead and left click, hold, and drag. I'm going to, without the insert overwrite on, I'm going to left click on the offset line here. And over here on the upper right hand side, I have the ability to change this running into a center line, but I can also add the instead of converting it, I can actually add a center line, and that's if I use the drop down arrow. I want to use the green plus that goes from, it looks like, line to running center line. The other one is outer contour, but I actually want the center line here because I'm just going to do a satin stitch. I will left click on that, and that will actually add a center line input at a specific width after that offset, that number 4 here. This is a little wide for me, but what's nice is I can actually see the kind of the skeleton of this, or the wire frame of this. I can go to the parameters and actually change the width by going, if I click up here on the P, I would go to the tab called center line. I'm going to change that width. Let's change it to about 3 millimeters. And typically with different types of appliques, your width of your satin stitch is typically about 4 millimeters, 3 to 4 millimeters. 3 is a little bit small, but let's see what that looks like. We'll press OK. It'll immediately go down. And what I'm looking for here is that the satin stitch is going to cover both my placement and my tack down and any ragged edges that my material may have. So you can see it's going a little bit on the inside of that fabric. You do want to make sure that that's covered, and like I said, that zigzag or that swing stitch is going to be covered as well. So I'm good with that. Let's go ahead and calculate. We'll calculate that. I do see that that's going to cover everything. If I want to change the density here, I can come up here. I'm going to make it a little bit more dense, adding a little bit density, 3.8, enter, and then I will calculate. Okay, so I've added some density there. If I want to go into the parameters and add some underlay to, I can go to fill underlayer as well as running underlayer, and add whatever I want. So let's go ahead and add a single zigzag. I'll just leave everything as is, press OK. We will calculate it, and you can see there's my zigzag underlayer. I do have all those parameters that I can change if I want. So let's go to the next section. With the insert overwrite off, I'm going to go to the offset option of the anchor, the outside of the anchor. Now, one thing I do want to show you is that because we are going to do the center line, I started, I've got start and end points here for my zigzag or my swing, and I do want to keep this in mind because with the center run I might have to change some points, and we'll see that in just a second. So I'm going to come up here to the upper right hand side. I'm going to use the green plus. I'm going to change it from, I'm going to add a center line from that running stitch. Left click on that. You can see that there's my frame. I want it a little bit larger, want it a little bit thicker. So I'm going to go to the parameters, I'm going to go to center line, and I'm going to actually change that to 4 so we can actually see what that wireframe looks like. I like that. Now I'm going to come down here and show you. You can see here this is kind of a T where it's meeting here. So with that I might need to change it. I might need to add some some points. I can certainly move points, but because I'm dealing with the center run, it's a little bit different than normal. I'm going to go ahead and bring this one down here, and I need to insert a point. So I'm actually going to use my scroll wheel and scroll. Oh, that's actually going differently. I'm going to click on this button here. So when I hit my scroll wheel, it activated my stitches. So what I want to do is I wanted to go to this point here, and I want to add a point in between this one and this one. You can see there's my little arrow right there. I want to go ahead and click on Insert Overwrite, click on that, and then I want to come to this point right here and make a double click. And you can see what I've done there is that I've made that corner point. I'm just going to go ahead and get out of the Insert Overwrite. I'm going to calculate that, and now you can see it looks a lot better than what I had before. So since I did have it on that corner right here, I did have to change some things just to make sure it would follow properly. So I now have the cover stitch for both the anchor and the inside, but if you look on the left hand side on my film, I don't have it in the order that I want. I actually want this anchor, the outside of the anchor, to go after after or the end of the inside part of the anchor. So I'm just going to take this with a left click, hold and drag. I'm just going to bring that down to the bottom here. This stitch I really don't need anymore, so I am just going to go ahead, left click on it, and actually I need to go to my cursor mode, left click on it and delete it. I don't need that anymore. So with this is my film showing me the actual stitch order. Here I need to put a stop function in before it starts doing that cover stitch, and that way it's going to stop before that starts stitching again. So I'm in my coordinate mode, or I'm sorry, I'm in my cursor mode, but we can do this in parameter or coordinate mode. And I really do want to do it in that mode. It makes it, just so we're all working in the same mode. So let's go ahead and zoom the whole thing. We now have the correct settings, but I might have to go in here. You can see there's some things that might be a little wrong in here. You can see it, it doesn't look quite right. So let's go into that parameter mode. Let's zoom in and see what we can do to fix this. So we're going to zoom in here. let's turn this area invisible and this area invisible. Left click off to the side so I can get to that parameter mode. Let's see what's going on. So with me selected on this, I'm going to use my up and down arrow keys, and I can see going forward I do have some curved lines, and then again this is according to what I drew. So maybe I should have used a left double click here. So I'm going to go here with it selected. I want to change that to a corner. So I'm going to left click on corner here. It'll change it to a corner. Let's recalculate it. And you can see that's already kind of fixing it. So let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit further. Maybe I'll go to this guy right here. Let's delete this altogether. So I'm just going to backspace. You can see it change that wireframe. Let's go ahead and calculate. Make sure that looks good. Okay, I'm thinking that looks very nice. So I'm just going to move it a little bit. Let's calculate it again. Okay, then we want to go up to our other problem area, which is right up here. Looks like this section right here is not faring so well, so I'm just going to click on it, then hit delete. Looks much nicer that way. Going to go ahead and recalculate it, and you can see now that looks, whoops, I lost it. It's okay, but it looks much nicer. Let's go on the other side here. We're going to go ahead and zoom in, and we're going to click on this guy right here. Let's go ahead and delete that and go ahead and calculate, and you can see that changes here. So going through and in our coordinate mode, going in and changing things around, we can definitely see the differences made here. So let's turn those areas back on, visible, so I can see them. Let's go ahead and zoom the whole thing. We can see now that we do have the placement, the tack down, the cover stitch. We do have our appropriate stops. So now when we export the design, it should stop in between, but we now have those 3 steps. Some additional things that we can do to the design, if we want to have control over the stitch angles on the satin stitch, or change it to structured instead of center line, there's some nice tools for conversion. Basically, I am still in the coordinate mode. I'm going to left click. Well, it might be a little difficult to get this, but actually let's turn our 2 anchors invisible, left click off to the side. Now left click on the center line. Up here on the upper right hand side, we have the ability to convert the center line to pairs, which is kind of the first step if you want to convert it to structured. So we can first convert it to pairs. Now it's converted to pairwise, and then after it's converted to pairwise, we can go to the middle tool right here and convert it to structured. So when we convert it to structured, left click on that, now, well, it's just a wireframe, but you can see that the angles are now green. So you have the ability to go in, and we'll go to the angle or stitch direction mode, go in and actually change these angles should you want. I'm just going to turn off the insert overwrite. It allows me then to go into the angle mode or the structured mode or stitch directions mode and change those angles. I can delete angles, but let's go ahead and calculate the stitching. And after we calculate, we now have that as a satin stitch, again with the angles that we can change. So, if you want to come to the corners and do some changes in here, for example, change it to a mitered corner or a capped corner, we can do that. So let's go ahead and zoom in. I'm just going to quickly show you how we can go in and change this to a mitered corner. With the area zoomed in on, I am still in coordinate mode. Insert overwrite is off, so I can select this right here. I'm going to go to the special directions and left click here. Here I'm going to go ahead and start on the outside of this corner, left click. I've got this green dotted line, left click. go ahead and calculate. And actually, before I do that, I need to go into here. Let's take that and move that stitch direction out of here so I can then go, let's go ahead and recalculate that. Then I can go into the special directions. Let's go ahead and left click. Oh, we're a little bit behind here. Select the area, go to the special directions, left click and left click. Let's go ahead and calculate that. And after we calculate it, now you're going to see that we do have kind of the mitered area. That one went to that special direction, so let's go ahead and get that one out of there. Let's go ahead and delete that. And we are going to go, right now we have stitch directions. Let's go ahead and add a stitch direction here. Left click, left click. I'm going to turn off that insert overwrite. Let's go ahead and change that stitch direction a little bit. Change this direction. And go ahead and calculate. And you can see how we can change that corner more to, a mitered corner, a special corner. And this is where we would go in, and if we want to change any of the the settings as far as the overlap goes and things like that, we can do that. So changing it to structured, you definitely have some benefits there, and playing with that. We can always go back and recalculate the stitch directions, after doing changes, and it'll kind of go back to what it thinks automatically. So you can always, in a sense, kind of start over, play with these stitch directions, and again, you've got more control over the stitch directions rather than being with center line. So let's go back, let's look at the whole design here. If you are happy with the design and you're ready to stitch, that's where we go in and export or save it for a machine format. Of course, we always want to save it within our directory, and actually while we're working on it, we do want to save intermittently, which I did not show you in this video, but let's go ahead and hit save. I do want the starting and ending point to be in the center. Let's go ahead and hit OK. And first of all, let's save this as 1, and I will call it Anchor Applique. We'll go ahead and hit save. After it's saved, you can now see it says 1 here. Let's go to File and Save As. We'll go ahead and press OK, and then we're going to hit the Export button. We can choose the code that we want, press OK, and then save it to wherever we'd like on our computer. So now we've got that design saved. We can now stitch it out. Nope, let's go ahead and cancel that. Again, if you want to make changes to it, you do have that GIS file format that's been saved within the internal directory to make sure that that it is completely editable, so that you can change anything that you want in there. So those hopefully this video has been beneficial, and I appreciate I appreciate you watching this. If you have any questions, please contact us. My email is Andrea, ANDREA, @ZSKmachines.com. Thank you.